Hello, welcome back to teleSUR English. We go live to Cuba as the 10th Legislature of the National Assembly of People's Power will be constituted by the 470 deputies elected last March in the 168 municipalities of the country. Let's listen.
Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, primer secretario del Comité Central del Partido Comunista de Cuba y presidente de la República. Esteban Lazo Hernández, presidente de la Asamblea Nacional del Poder Popular.
Esteban Lazo Hernández, President of the National Assembly and the Council of State.
Diputadas y diputados.
Deputies.
Invitados. En cumplimiento de las normativas
In compliance with the normative,
en el día de hoy, las
today,
diputadas y diputados
all deputies elected on March 26 are united here today to constitute the National Assembly in his 10th legislature. This session is celebrated under the Article 6, Capital 2 of the Constitution of the Republic and Title 8, Chapter 4 of the Electoral Law. According to the law, the National Assembly of People's Power is entitled to elect its President, Vice President, and Secretary General. Therefore, the other members of this institution, besides also the President and Vice President of the Republic of Cuba. In this first stage, present today is here, joining with me today the Vice President Tomás Amaral Díaz and Secretary María Esther Bacallao Martínez. Also present María Consuelo Baeza Martín, member of the Secretariat of the National Assembly of People's Power, the supreme institution of the state, represent the will of the people. It is composed by 470 deputies elected for a 5-year term. It's validated by the National Electoral Council. This morning, ahead of this session, the National Electoral Council, corresponding with Article 13 of the Electoral Law, reviewed the certificates of the election and confirmed the validity of the elections of the deputies. Now we are going to inform you of the composition of the National Assembly. Of the 470 deputies elected, there are 221 delegates from the base. The necessary policy of renovation is complied. There are 303 deputies for the first time here, and 167 there are 262 women. Of them, 160 are delegates of, and some of them are 225 years. Of the elected deputies, 93 are between 18 and 35 years, 19.7%. Of them, 58 are delegates of the municipalities. Between 36 and 50 years of age, we have 226, and between 51 and 60 years, we have 110. 41 people are older than 61 years old.
El promedio de edad de la asamblea es de 46 años. Del total,
Of the total, 442 are graduated from the education field, and 27 of them 45% of deputies, 212 are black, 258 are white.
Vinculados directamente a la producción y los servicios, es decir, obreros del sector campesino y cooperativo.
Farmers and workers, educators, and workers of the health care system as 172.
Vinculados a la actividad investigativa 20.
Linked to the investigative works, there are 20 people.
Vinculados al deporte 12.
Linked to sports are 12. 12 are related to journalism. Writers and artists, 31. Officials and other members of the 26. Members of the People's Power, 36. 15 are head of local organizations. 61 are belonging to state organizations and the justice system. Delegates for local organizations, 82. Of them, 33 are head of the local communities. Those representing religious institutions are 3. Of the 470 deputies elected, we have present here today 462. Therefore, there's the quorum establishes to constitute the National Assembly of the People's Power of X Legislature.
No temáis una muerte gloriosa, que morir por la patria es vivir. En candelas vivir es vivir, en afrenta y oprobios sumidos.
escuchar y entonar las notas de
After
nuestro
listening to our national anthem,
de acuerdo con lo establecido en el apartado
according to the established of Article 213 of Electoral Law,
da la firma del juramento
we're going to
de todos los
proceed
diputados.
deputy statement.
Lady Cirilo Dubois, diputada más joven, electa por el municipio Guantánamo, para que dé lectura al juramento. Cada uno de nosotros, diputados
Each one of us, deputies of the National Assembly of People's Power,
al tomar posesión de nuestros
to
cargos,
take off
por nuestra propia y libre convicción, juramos guardar
we
lealtad
swear
a la
to
patria,
loyalty to the homeland,
hacer observar la Constitución,
to respect the
las leyes
Constitution,
y demás
the laws,
normas jurídicas,
and judicial norms,
comportarme como fiel servidor del pueblo y de la
to behave
sociedad,
as a field servant of the people,
cuales me someto, cumplir de manera cabal
to
las
fulfill to the
obligaciones
letter
que me vienen impuestas por el cargo para el que he sido elegido, y si de algún modo faltare a
And
este juramento,
if
que
I
los que me eligieron se
didn't
lo
fulfill this,
diputadas y diputados. Ratifica cada uno de ustedes pública y
deputies, do you ratify this statement?
ratifico, diputadas y diputados. Los
Deputies,
invito a suscribir el juramento.
I invite you to subscribe the statement. You may say it.
In this working session of the 10th Legislature of Cuba's Parliament, also this People's Assembly, People's Power Assembly, all the lawmakers also are now ratifying their oath to take the office. The oath contains their duties, their rights, and also their jurors between his duties and how they have to comply with this in their term in office. Priorly, we were listening to the words of Alina Balseiro, who is the president of the National Electoral Commission. She was validating this new legislature and saying the composition of the lawmakers and the broad landscape from there were coming. They have a variety of upbringing, as they are young people there between the lawmakers, also many female lawmakers and deputies, as well as black people, white people, professionals, artists, journalists, and other lawmakers from different sectors of society, of Cuban society. This 10th legislature is made up of the lawmakers that were elected priorly in March, and also they come from all over the country, from the 168 municipalities of the nation. The new legislature has to face the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the harsh and brutal consequences of the blockade imposed by the U.S. against Cuba, and also a new landscape in the international arena in the geopolitics, where Cuba has a key role in the nation and also in the region because of its role in Latin America and the upbringing and the uprising of different leftist governments in Latin America. This new legislature also faces this harsh economic reality for the island. As we know, Cuba is reliant and codependent on tourism, a sector that was harshly and badly hit because of the pandemic and other circumstances in the last 3 and 5 years. Let's remember the last 5 years when the 9th legislature was in power. Not only the COVID-19 pandemic hit the nation, also several different consequences and different factors that impacted the island. We had also different realities in Cuba as the island faced a tragedy last year, at the province of Matanzas, where one of the thermoelectric and the oil stations there exploded and was hit by an explosion. And it was one of the events that marked this legislature that had to overcome that tragedy, that national tragedy, and also the impact on the national feeling and the collective of Cuban people. Also, last year, the island faced the impact of Cyclone Ian, a cyclone that devastated the western part of the island and left several infrastructural damages, not only in the capital of the country and in the western provinces, but also especially in Pinar del Rio, where the schools were uprooted, the trees were uprooted, and the schools, the hospitals, the houses were also torn down by this cyclone that also tore down the power grid, the national power grid. Let's remember, Cuba faced a massive blackout in all the western region for a week, a whole week, that brought not only the discomfort in the population because of the blackout and the lack of power, but also it impacted the already harsh and badly impacted national power grid that we remember, and let's remember, had Soviet technology to supply the national demand of electricity and the national demand of power. The island has this new legislature that will have to face these challenges as the national economy has to recover and has to take back from the sanctions, from the lack of tourism, as we were saying, the lack of production. And Cuba needs to bring up more strategies, needs to look for alternatives, and needs to look for new alliances in the region and outside the region to face up not only the blockade, the U.S. blockade, but also the harsh situation that it is facing. Now, the legislature, after taking the oath of office, all the lawmakers, and after hearing the notes of the national anthem, now they are recreating and they are refreshing and retaking these images that reflect the national reality of Cuba and how Cuba remembers prior legislatures and remembers prior leaders as Fidel Castro. As we know, this Fidel Castro is the historical leader of Cuban Revolution. And in his absence, now his brother, Raúl Castro Ruz, is also present there in this 10th legislature of People's Power Assembly. As we know, Raúl Castro is the remaining leader of the Cuban Revolution. He is a pillar of the ideological core of Cuban's revolution that is there, that is also accompanying this process that means for Cuba, means a restitution, means continuity, means renovation, because it is not only to renovate the National Assembly, it's also to renovate the political landscape in the island, to be more inclusive, to be more representative of Cuba's reality of today that is not the one of 50 or 20 years ago. The National Assembly is now preparing to discuss other documents and also to elect a new president, to ratify a new head of state for Cuba, and the head of state also will elect his vice president, his deputy prime minister, and other top officials. Let's listen.